Of
When was
course
the
he
last
does.
election? When was the last election?
Well, we tried to hold elections in 2021, and they
When
were blocked
was the
by
last
Israel because they
election?
blocked us. Foreign
And you
language
are
is
a
English.
repellent reptile. You're a reptile.
Okay. The fighting has stopped, but that's not the same thing as peace. Cracks are already appearing in the fragile Gaza ceasefire. Hamas is back enforcing its control over the Strip, and President Trump has gone from peacemaker to threatening violence. Can the path to phase 2 be secured before the whole thing crumbles? I'm Melinda Nusafora, and you're watching Counterpoints. In a matter of days, the US president has gone from this.
This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God.
To this.
We have told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently.
His change in tone is down to Hamas's apparent refusal to hand over its weapons. That's a must if this ceasefire is to move to phase 2. The Israeli Prime Minister also hasn't ruled out a return to fighting if Hamas doesn't demilitarize. The group's failure to return the bodies of all deceased hostages has also called the deal into question. Israel says it's upheld its part of the deal. When he addressed the Knesset, President Trump even declared the world is loving Israel again. So, after 2 years of global protests and the derailing of normalization talks, can Israel rehabilitate its reputation on the world stage? Coming up in this debate, we'll ask if the ceasefire is already looking shaky, whether international pro-Palestinian rallies will continue or be forgotten, and if it's too soon to revive normalization discussions with Israel. Joining us for a discussion on the latest on this ceasefire deal is Norman Finkelstein, a political scientist and author of the new book Gaza's Gravediggers, an inquiry into corruption in high places. Dr. Jamal Nazzal is back with us, a spokesperson for the Palestinian political party Fatah. And rounding out our panel is Hussein Abdul-Hussain, a research fellow at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies. Gentlemen, welcome to Counterpoints and thanks for being with us. Not even a week into this latest ceasefire, and it already looks as if it could be under strain. There's no doubt that given the scale of destruction across the Gaza Strip, it was always going to be a complex task to retrieve the bodies of all the hostages taken during the October 7 attacks and return them to Israel. But that is exactly what Hamas signed on to, agreeing to do it within 72 hours. And yet it has failed to uphold that side of the agreement. And that has caused consternation across the border in Israel. Norman, are you surprised that this ceasefire is already looking shaky?
There are two things to say. Number one, I find it positively disgusting that you're framing this as a failure on the part of Hamas. Are you not aware, can you really not be aware that there are 50 million tons of rubble in Gaza? Are you not aware that according to the international humanitarian organizations, it'll take until the year 2050 to clear out the rubble in Gaza?
And yet Hamas knows
now,
this
if Hamas
too, but they still agreed to it.
Excuse me. If Hamas says it can't find some of the bodies in the rubble, you're now blaming them for that? Can you possibly comprehend how outrageous a statement that is?
Okay.
And the fact that while we're all talking about the buried hostage bodies in Gaza, there are literally, conservatively, thousands of Palestinian bodies buried in Gaza. Are you not concerned about them as well?
It's not a zero-sum game. We can be concerned about both things at the same time.
Yeah, but you didn't mention the other bodies.
Because it's the first question of our debate, sir, and that's where we're beginning. Why don't I hand it over to Hussein and see what's your take on it? Do you think it's a failing on Hamas, or do you think that Norman has a very valid point there?
Yeah, of course, if you sign on a deal wherein you commit to do something, it's advisable that you do it. And this is on both sides. If the Israelis kept their part of the bargain, I think it's only logical for Hamas to keep their part of the bargain. But that really doesn't concern me. I think sooner or later, Hamas will find these bodies. They'll probably surface and they'll probably hand them back to the Israelis. What concerns me, and this is from a point of view of someone on the Arab side, is the brutality that Hamas is showing even before the ink has, even for it's done with its part of the deal with Israel, that they're going after rivals inside of Gaza, killing them, executing them cold-bloodedly on camera. That's what worries me. I think, that part of the deal with Israel, I think the whole world is behind it. The whole world is focused on it. Everyone knows what's going on. But no one is focused on these Palestinians who are being shot dead, even though over the past 2 years, the world was really angry at Palestinians losing their lives in this war. But all of a sudden, these hapless Palestinians seem to be killed with no one worried about it. Even President Trump said, I'm okay with that. It doesn't worry me. The only statement that I saw came from Bradley Cooper, the chief of CENTCOM, who said this is not okay and Hamas should stop doing it. But I don't think that's flying. I don't think Hamas is really listening to anyone. And as this goes on, I think, that's what really worries me more than, the rest of the deal between Hamas and Israel.
I can see you shaking your head there. Jamal, what's your take?
I believe the burden of proof is basically on Israel. After all, more than 10,000 Palestinian individuals from Gaza are missing. They are not accounted for. Nobody knows where they are. It is logical to assume that Israel has kidnapped a lot of Palestinian individuals, and they are they have been killed, or their remains may be kept in Israel, hidden by Israel. Maybe Israel is hoping to exchanging them sometime for something, or keeping them forever. There are a lot of remains of Palestinian individuals also in the West Bank who haven't been handed over to their families. So Israel has a long history of torturing Palestinians also on the psychological level, and they know how much of suffering this causes to Palestinian families. When it comes to Hamas, it's really, really, really hard to defend the devil, because Hamas is no lesser a devil than Israel, in spite of the fact that Israel is the aggressor. Israel is the initiator of this conflict. Israel is really and has always been keen on keeping this conflict ongoing for probably forever. And I know Israel is only looking for excuses to resume the hostilities against the Palestinians. And I know if Hamas fails to deliver the remains of the Israeli hostages, I think Israel will find the proper excuse to launch the war once again. What worries me most is the fact that either Israel and the United States have really turned a blind eye on what Hamas is doing to the Palestinian people at this moment. All these executions on the street are a very dangerous endeavor that Hamas has engaged itself with. And it is taking revenge on Palestinian families, calling them collaborators. So if they are collaborators of Israel, as Hamas claims them to be, why is the United States turning a blind eye to these atrocities? We are fed up with what Israel has done to us. We don't need to see these atrocities taking place at the hand of Hamas. So I hope that this plan will be carried out so that we can open a political horizon once all of this mess is removed. But who knows what the real intention of Israel is? I'm not the one who can tell.
Norman, what do you make of those statements? I mean, is the burden on Israel here? Is Hamas the one putting it in jeopardy?
I do not believe that we are going to get anywhere past the exchange of hostages for a handful of Gazan prisoners being held in Israel. And I would want to emphasize... You don't think it will move to phase two? Well, no. What's going to happen, in my opinion, obviously, when you talk about the future, you're engaging in speculation. But I would call mine speculation informed speculation. After each of Israel's high-tech killing sprees in Gaza, namely Operation Cast Lead in 2008-9, Operation Pillar of Defense in 2012, Operation Protective Edge in 2014, and even after Israel murdered 10 passengers on the Mavi Marmara in 2010. After each of those events, those high-tech killing sprees, Israel promised to lift the blockade of Gaza. Did it lift the blockade? No. Each time the international community said the blockade of Gaza was illegal and unsustainable. Did that stop Israel from continuing the blockade? No. And the events of October 7th were a direct result of this brutal medieval blockade of Gaza. There is no reason to suppose that this time Israel is going to even relax, let alone lift the blockade of Gaza. What will happen is, once the cameras disappear, when I say cameras, I mean the international cameras, once they disappear, we're going to return to the status quo ante October 7th with one big difference. There's nothing left in Gaza. 95% of the housing in Gaza has been pulverized. 70% of the hospitals have been destroyed. Half the schools have been destroyed. There's nothing left. And so Israel has achieved its goal. Its goal, as it announced it in the first week, was to make Gaza unlivable, so as to give the people of Gaza two choices. Choice number one, to stay and starve, or choice number two, to leave. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu was hoping for a stampede out of Gaza. He wasn't able to achieve it, and so he's going to have to settle for a trickle out of Gaza. But there is no possibility. You have to be certifiably insane to believe that Israel, after devoting 2 whole years to leveling Gaza, after devoting 2 long years, is now going to rebuild it for the Palestinians. Okay. How can any sane person possibly believe that?
Hussein, do you agree or disagree with that contention? Do you think Israel has any interest in moving to phase two, rebuilding the Gaza Strip?
No, I almost disagree with every word Norman said. We can't really go back to 2010 every time we're discussing the agreement of last week. That's not how policy or politics or building anything of use to the Palestinians works. What I like to see happen is, number one, for each party who signed on the first phase to uphold the first phase. And I think this will happen. Now, why did this 20-point peace plan got divided into phase one and phase two? And mind you, the 20 points were endorsed by everyone, back to back, from Turkey and Qatar to Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia. And by the way, these countries do not see eye to eye on almost most of the things in the region, but they agreed on this plan, on the 20-point plan. And if we follow the 20-point plan, it would have been a good roadmap to pull Gaza out of the medieval times under the rule of Hamas to a better time under the rule of a different Palestinian Authority. That's the point of the plan. Now, why was this divided into phase 1 and phase 2? It's mainly because Hamas refuses to disarm. And disarmament is not only an Israeli request, it's a request by everyone, including, like I said, Qatar and Turkey and Saudi Arabia and the UAE and everybody else. So Hamas refuses to disarm, and this would have killed the whole thing, except that everyone decided to divide, and they said, okay, let's have a deal on what we agree on, and let's defer what we disagree on until the first part is done. Now, after the first part is done, no one thinks that Hamas will disarm. You have the same model that you have with Hezbollah. The war stops on the assumption that the next step would be that the militia would disarm and that the rule would go to the regular government, not to a non-state actor. And this never happens. And what you see in Gaza now is that disarmament of Hamas is not only related to reconstructing Gaza, but also related to the Palestinians getting back 53% of the territory that remains under the control of Israel. So this too is incumbent on Hamas disarming, but we know that Hamas doesn't really care whether it gets the land back, whether the Palestinians die or not. There's no process of cost and effect by Hamas. If you now sit and calculate and think, listen, we lost 60 or 70,000 Palestinians dead in this war. We lost 53% of the territory, and all of this for what? To get 300 Palestinians out of prison? Does this look like a good cost and effect calculus to you? So all of these questions, Hamas is not asking. Hamas is only focused on keeping its arms. As long as this is the case, I'm afraid that we'll be stuck in phase 1, and that'll be to the detriment of Gazans first and foremost.
May I ask the representative of the Foundation for the Defense of Washington's Slaves and Stooges, may I ask him a question? He
Go
seems
ahead.
to be so emphatic. He seems to be so emphatic, this representative of Washington's Slaves and Stooges. He seems to be so emphatic that Hamas has to disarm. Hamas killed approximately 1,200 Israelis, 800 of whom were civilians. That's what Israel, on average, did every week for the last 2 years. Right now, there's a consensus in the international community that it was not Hamas the past 2 years, it was Israel that was committing genocide in Gaza. It was Israel that killed not 30 children on October 7th, but at bare minimum, 20,000 children. So this representative
what's your question
of the
to Mr.
defense
Hussain,
of,
Abdul-Hussain?
allow me to finish.
Yeah, what's the question for him?
This representative of the defense of Washington's slaves and stooges.
The defense of democracy.
Why aren't you asking for Israel, who by international consensus was committing genocide in Gaza? Why aren't you asking for them to disarm, Mr. Slave and Stooge?
Okay, it's Mr. Hussain, Abdul-Hussain. Yes, go ahead and respond to Norman.
Of course, I'll just ignore the ad hominem because that's not my way of debating. I'll stick to the ideas.
You're a slave and a stooge.
Someone who's invested in that part of the world. When Israel and Lebanon were at war, I have family and friends who were suffering that war. I was not just sitting in New York and trying to pick a fight with Israel. Israel can do whatever it wants to do. My concern is on the other side. I want the Lebanese, I want the Palestinians, I want family I grew up with in that
Your
part
concern
of the world
is your
to live a
paycheck.
decent life.
Your concern is your paycheck.
We'll just show we can disagree on points, but we will be respectful to our other panelists. You can continue.
I'm not respectful of a slave and a stooge.
We're not going to call names, Norman. We're going to disagree on points, but we're not going to dissolve into name-calling. Hussein Abdul-Hussain, continue your response, please.
Thank you. My point here is that as an Arab American, my concern is to practice introspection, is to fix the situation so that the people in my part of the world can live a decent life. Now, Israel can be wrong. Israel can do whatever it wants to do. Mr. Norman has an issue with Israel. That's on him and the Israelis. But that's not my role. My role is really to get our sides working and rolling. And this requires a lot. Now, this, of course, this doesn't absolve anyone on any side from, whatever they did. But my focus is to get things going, and the model of having non-state actors undermining the governments, whether the Palestinian Authority or the government of Lebanon or the government of Iraq. This is a model that I am someone who opposes vehemently, and I think this is a huge issue that only us Arabs can really stand up to and fix. Of course, war and everything else deserves our attention, but I'm happy that the war is over now so that we can focus on fixing from within.
Jamal, yeah, you want to say something there?
Is the war over? This is the promise. It may be a fake promise, and they may break it at will. And I think Israel is a classic nitpicker. They will find an excuse to resume this conflict. And please, let's not turn this on the question of whose fault is this. The occupation of Palestine is more than 100 years, ever since the Palestinian people have been suffering. Now, every second word Israeli officials utter worldwide will include the name of Hamas, because they like to place the blame on Hamas. In my view, Hamas did a catastrophic mistake doing the October 7th the way it did it. I wish it didn't take place. I wish it didn't happen. But I think this is the best day of Benjamin Netanyahu's life. Without October 7th, he most probably would have been ousted. He would be out of power, or he may be even in prison. However, let's not turn a blind eye on the genocide. And I don't think the ceasefire is the end of the genocide. And I know that a genocide, it takes more than bullets and airstrikes to commit a genocide. Israel has different ways of undermining Palestinian livelihoods, also in the West Bank, even by withholding the tax revenues of the Palestinian Authority. You can apply the definition of genocide on these Israeli measures because they harm the life of the Palestinian people, also in the West Bank, even without shooting one bullet. So we should not stop talking about genocide because there is a ceasefire. And the way I read this Trump plan, it's a capitulation plan for Hamas. It's the chronology of disappearance. They want Hamas to sign on finishing its rule in Gaza. And I'm not sure it has a choice. If you ask me prior to October 7th what the ideal solution would be with Hamas, it would be for Hamas to hand in its weapons to the Palestinian Authority, to reinstall the Palestinian government in Gaza, to probably create a government of national unity. That was possible. That was realistic. Hamas rejected all this. Instead, they decided to go this path, this dangerous path, and we ended up with Gaza completely destroyed. People are on the street. The situation as it is well known to everyone. Mm-hmm. How do we go from here? How do we go from here? If Hamas doesn't carry on its commitments according to the plan it has signed, Israel will find the excuse to restart the war. Mm-hmm. If it goes on, we don't know if these promises are true or false. But what choices are left?
Norman?
It's regrettable that your two other guests seem not to be aware of what Hamas agreed to. I am not here to defend Hamas, and I am not here for no reason at all because I have some particular personal animus towards the state of Israel. I have only two concerns: what's truthful and what's just. Now, let's start with the truthful. Your two guests, if they are capable of reading, will know
We are
that
capable.
Hamas agreed. Okay, then you are. Then let's remember, what was Hamas's statement? Did Hamas agree to disarm? In its statement, did it agree to disarm? Let's have a simple yes or no, because you're accusing Hamas.
Well, I think
of
Hamas
breaking
can read
its
both
promise.
Arabic and English, and I think they know
didn't
what they
ask
have
you-
signed.
I didn't ask you what you think. I'm asking for facts.
I thought you did.
It's called.
I thought you asked me. I'm
truth,
sorry.
my friend. It's called truth, my friend. Did Hamas, in its reply to the 20-point so-called peace plan, ceasefire plan, did it agree to disarm? Or did it make an explicit stipulation that those questions or their response to those questions would come later? Did they agree to disarm?
Jamal?
I would like to hear a clear yes or no.
Are you asking me? I really don't care what Hamas says, but I've heard what Mr. Trump,
I didn't
your
ask
president,
you what
said
you
yesterday.
care about.
They said
You're
he said
blaming
you-
blaming Hamas for breaking the agreement. So I'm asking a simple
I didn't.
question. It's not
I didn't.
difficult.
I didn't, Mr.
It's not
Mr. Finkelstein.
difficult.
If I may, with all due respect, Hamas has not yet broken the agreement. This still is to be seen. They may honor the agreement.
Thank you.
Or they
Now
may
let me
break it.
hear that.
This is up in
Let
the,
me hear
up
that.
in the air. I
Let
don't
me
know.
hear that from your other
president,
guests.
just one sentence, please.
Let's hear it from the other
Your
guests.
president
Did
said
Hamas
that
agree
if they
to
do not-
disarm?
This is my answer. Yes, this is my answer. First of all, I find it ironic that the New Yorker is lecturing two Arab natives on what should and should not happen between Hamas and the other guys, whether in Gaza or in Lebanon. This is number one. Number two, long before Hamas committed the atrocity of killing 1,200 Israelis, it killed 350 Palestinians in 2007 from the Palestinian Authority. Their names are still there on the
700.
website. You can, and thank you for the correction, you can check it out. Hezbollah did the same. It killed so many Lebanese before it engaged in war with Israel. So as Lebanese and Palestinians, we want Hamas to be disarmed long before the war in Gaza happened, long before October 7 happened. Now, it just happens that all of us are aligned to see Hamas disarmed. This should not take from
Yeah, I
any
agree.
other debate
All this,
about
I
the
agree with
region.
you. I agree with you. All the Arab slaves and stooges would like to see Hamas disarmed. I agree with that point.
If
agree.
you can resist using slurs against our other guests, we will keep things civil and we can debate
Those
the
are
points.
not slurs. Those are dictionary definition words. A slave and a stooge.
Yes, but I'm
people who are paid generously. People who are paid
Well,
generously
I'm sure
to serve
Mr.
the
Hussain
interests,
would...
to serve the interests of the...
Mr. Hussain,
to
is that
serve
how
the
you
interests
consider
of the
yourself,
Arab-
just to give you a chance to reply to Norman there?
Why are you
No,
attacking everyone who didn't attack you? Or you should attack us if we disagree with you on something. I still did not see why. Where did we disagree?
And let's just let Mr.
Where do you disagree with anything I said? What's your disagreement with what I said?
I'll answer that question because Israel just committed the genocide in Gaza, and you're blaming the whole thing on Hamas. And that's pretty disgusting.
I did not say that.
And
I
that's
thought you
pretty
understand
disgusting.
better English
And
than
you are
me.
And
I'm
you
the
are
one whose foreign language is English.
a repellent reptile. You're a reptile.
Okay,
To blame
let's again,
Hamas for the
Norman.
murder of
We are.
50,000 children.
I respectfully request you to not
did not
use slurs
blame Hamas
against
for that.
our other guests. I'm going to move us on to our next segment because we've got a lot to cover, and we might just decompress a little bit from that. 2 years of this war, and it has undeniably changed many things. Obviously, as we can see from this debate, it has made impassioned discussion on both sides. It has not just affected the Middle East. Globally, it has spawned these protests, this anger, this open discussion and often criticism of what people are accusing of this political Israel lobby. These things were sort of fringe discussions before. Now they're vehemently talked about. Surveys have found that in particular, young people in many countries now hold unfavourable views of Israel. However, we've heard this from President Trump in the Knesset this week. I invite you all to have a listen to what President Trump said.
The world is loving Israel again, and I said, Bibi, you're going to be remembered for this far more than if you kept this thing going.
Hussein, what do you think about what President Trump said? Is the world loving Israel again? Do you think that that's a correct statement?
I really can't speak for the whole world. From the surveys that we see in the United States, it seems that the numbers have remained pretty steady, with a younger population against Israel, the older population still supportive of Israel, and the war clearly changing views and opinions. So before October 7, there was the views and opinions were something. After October 7, things tilted against Israel. Now the war has stopped, fingers crossed, of course, because I know the guest might say it hasn't stopped yet. I'm hoping that the ceasefire will hold. Now that it's stopped, we will have to give it some time and then survey the people again and see what happens. I know that during war, any party that's engaged in war tends to lose support, whether it's President Bush or whether it's Bibi Netanyahu, or anyone who engages in war. So I'm not sure this is the true measure, the true gauge. We'll have to wait and see. But again, this is not an issue that personally worries me. Israel has its own problems and issues. It can fix its own image. It can defend its own self. What I'm trying to say here is that we have issues with Hezbollah and Hamas, with or without Israel being on board.
Jamal, I saw you shaking your head when I put that first comment to Hussein.
I know I may say something that may sound personal. By all due respect, it really takes a large deal of bluntness to lecture a Palestinian on who Israel is. I grew up in Palestine. I finished my schooling in Palestine. My father left Palestine in 1964 to work in Germany. And when the 1967 war took place, he was deprived of his citizenship. So I grew up without my father under occupation. I've seen my peers killed by Israeli snipers during the first Intifada. And I was prevented from having a normal future in Palestine. Yet I still frequently visit my country, Palestine, where I have my mother, my house, and my fields, which I love a lot. And I think this conflict didn't start with Hamas, who joined the Israeli-Palestinian conflict 70 years later, after it has started. I didn't say in one word that the conflict is to blame and Hamas to blame. We know that Israel has created and booby-trapped the complete atmosphere, probably has tricked Hamas into this stupid mistake of October 7th. October 7th was an attack on the very existence of the Palestinian image in the world. We're not a people who kill children, who kidnap women and young girls. That's what Israel does. In my years, in my experience in Palestine, Israel has, during the first Intifada, killed over 4,000 Palestinian civilians. They sniped them to death. They did the same in the second Intifada. So when you debate Palestinians, please pay attention to not lecture them on who Israel is. And prior to this discussion, I respected you a lot. I even read your book. This is called The Industry of Holocaust. I read it a long time ago. It was translated into German. But please be more civil with the people you discuss with. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamal. Norman, what's your take on the question of whether the world is loving Israel again? Is it rehabilitating its image on the world stage? And of course, feel free to respond to Jamal's comments as well.
I'll first respond to Jamal's comments. Mr. Jamal, I've listened to the statements of Mr. Abbas over the past 2 years. In every public statement I have heard, he has blamed Hamas for the horror that has beset Gaza the past 2 years. Every public statement of his has blamed Hamas. Now, you're a Palestinian and you say you know the Palestinian situation. So I assume you are aware. Before October 7th, the people of Gaza were under a brutal siege. I assume you are aware that Israel put them under what they called a humanitarian minimum diet, where they only allowed a minimum number of calories in for the people of Gaza. I'm sure you are aware that periodically Israel launched its killing sprees in Gaza. I am sure
it did this
you are
to my
aware.
People. I monitored this.
Yeah, right. Fine. And then come October 2023, Gaza had disappeared from the international political stage. Whether you like it or not, Mr. Jamal, Hamas attempted international diplomacy. Hamas attempted nonviolent civil resistance, the Great March of Return, that began March 30th, 2018. Mm-hmm. By the way, Jamal, since you are interested in facts, not your fictions, what did the Palestinian Authority do in support of the Great March of Return? Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what it did.
Well, we'll let Jamal respond, and then we do need to get back on to topic.
Allow me to finish. It suppressed.
You asked a question. I think you deserve an answer.
Yes.
So we'll let Jamal respond to your question, Norman, and then we'll turn it back to the topic at hand. Jamal, your response to Norman's question?
Fatah, you're talking to the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the Palestinian Liberation Movement. That is Fatah. You know the history of Fatah. You know who Fatah is, and you know what Fatah did, and you know what Arafat did between the years 2000 and 2005.
For 43 years, I know.
Let me finish. When Hamas joined this conflict in 1991, their first operation against the Israeli army was in Nablus when they killed 1 Israeli soldier. 1991. That's almost 100 years after the Arab-Israeli conflict has started. Fatah started working against Israel in 1960, but we believed in making peace. However, Netanyahu aligned himself with Hamas and allowed them to torpedo the peace process through the suicide bombings. I will never forgive neither Netanyahu nor Hamas for destroying the possibilities of peace. As I mentioned, 1991, back then Mr. Netanyahu was the advisor of Mr. Shamir. He sat on his right side in the Madrid conference. Ever since, Mr. Netanyahu himself has been either head of the opposition or head of the government, and in either capacity, he has done his best to destroy every possibility, using Hamas as his pretext, his stupid idiots, the Hamas, to destroy the prospect of peace. What has President Abbas done? Well, I tell you what he did. I hope you know it. He signed the Roma Convention, which gave Palestine, the state of Palestine as it is now, the right to be member of the ICC. In this capacity, Mr. Netanyahu cannot travel to most countries of the world because most of the world's countries are members of the ICC. This is what Abbas did. I hope as scientists like yourself, widely respected also by myself, does know that. Do you know this? I assume you don't, because you asked me what we did. But your question was what we did to the March of the Return. You know who created the civil resistance. It's Fatah. We invited Hamas to participate in the civil uprising. They always despised this. They said this is like suicide. We don't want it. Back in 2017, we found We found a national committee for civil uprising. Hamas joined it nominally, but never took part in any of its meetings. They never wanted that. This is what parts of what we did. I can't list all of it. I don't have to.
Hussein, I'm going to bring you back in shortly. But Norman, if I can turn you back onto the topic at hand, I want your response to whether or not you think that President Trump is correct or incorrect when he says the world is loving Israel again. With a ceasefire, has Israel rehabilitated its reputation on the world stage?
Memories are short. I still remember during Operation Cast Lead 2008 to 9, there were huge international demonstrations condemning Israel's high-tech killing spree. So I can't say for certain that the memories will again be short and what happened in the past 2 years will be forgotten. But one thing I would say, at least in the Western world, there was a recognition, if only for, maybe it's just going to be weeks or months, about the nature and the magnitude of the crimes Israel was committing. In fact, according to the most recent Washington Post poll, 40% of American Jews believe that Israel was committing genocide in Gaza. Now, apart from that representative of that organization, I'm not aware of anyone who believes that it was Hamas that was committing genocide in Gaza. So your representative from that foundation represents exactly one person, and 40% of American Jews strongly disagree with him. They believe it was Israel that was committing genocide in Gaza.
Hussein, what do you think about that?
Of course it is.
Do you think that public sentiment has changed? Is Israel still a pariah state, as it has been described in some fields? I mean, we heard booing from the stadiums at the World Cup qualifiers when it was versing Italy just on Tuesday, I believe.
Look, I wouldn't say anything about how the Palestinians should act or do. And of course, Mr. Jamal, he's a Palestinian himself. He's aware of what happens in the West Bank and Gaza, and he has a say over this. I don't tell the Israelis either what to say or do. The countries I come from, Lebanon and Iraq, we have a huge issue of these countries living without a rule of law, living in a situation where might makes right, where foreign adversaries justify armed gangs undermining governments and undermining the rule of law. This is my focus. Now, whether Israel is popular or not, like Norman is saying, memories are short. Things change. Today there's war. Everyone is engaged. War ends. If it does, people switch something else. But again, that's not my issue. My issue is that I have a problem with Hamas and with Hezbollah and with the Iraqi militias and with the Houthis. Because these gangs are not accountable to anyone. They're not accountable to any elected government, to any government. They're not under any judiciary. They end up killing out of their own people much more than foreign adversaries. I've lost so many friends to Hezbollah in Lebanon and to Iraqi militias in Iraq. And this is regardless of anything connected to Israel. So this is the issue here, is that Hamas is undermining the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which is globally recognized as the sole and legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. And Hezbollah is undermining the government of Lebanon, which is elected, a parliament that's elected every 4 years, a cabinet that's elected, a president that was elected 8 months ago. And again, under the banner of fighting Israel or imperialism or America or God knows who, these militias undermine the rule of law and jeopardize the safety of people and do not let anyone live or let live. This is the main issue that that I have a problem with. Now, is Israel popular or not? Let Israelis worry about that. You know, I don't know how that is part of the problem.
I would like.
Norman?
I would like to ask this member of the Foundation Defense of Democracies. You seem to be very concerned about the rule of law and democracies. I wonder, sir, what's your opinion of that democracy in Egypt? Can you say a few words about that democracy in Jordan?
Okay. Norman, I'm going to pause you there. We're going to turn it back to our topic at hand. Jamal, I want to ask you, we're talking about international...
That is your topic.
It's not really...
That is your topic.
We're not debating democracies in other countries. We're specifically debating this issue. So, Jamal, let me ask you, with regards to these international movements about Israel, let me ask you, do you think the protests we saw over these previous 2 years, Jamal, do you think they've been impactful, or do you think they've been purely superficial? Do you think they've had any hand in bringing us to the day we are at today?
I think they have been impactful. I think they are necessary, and I think they have no reason to stop. I think they must go on to pressure the decision makers in the entire world. I myself participated in a lot of these peaceful marches in Europe, and they created awareness worldwide. And as I said before, it takes more than bullets and airstrikes to commit a genocide. Even the siege is a genocide. Even placing the Palestinian people under an internal occupation is a form of genocide. So all these people who sympathize with Palestine, they should please carry on with their work of these peaceful demonstrations everywhere they can go. And there's a topic we have to talk about. As Hussein said, we must draw a line between Muslims and Islamists. These fanatic movements, some of them were mentioned, some weren't. They don't represent Islam. To them, I'm an unbeliever. To them, we are seculars who do not deserve the same right or even to be alive. That's our issue with people like Hamas, Mr. Finkelstein. It's not the fact that they resist the Israeli occupation, as we all did at some stage, with so different forms and ways that were available to us according to the international law. Our disagreement with them doesn't have to do with Israel. It's a social, ideologic disagreement, because they want to Islamize even Muslim societies. They're like a malignant part of the Islamic world, and they have been supported, guess by whom? Sometimes by the Israeli government. Do you recall the quotation of Mr. Smotrich, who said the Palestinian Authority is a threat to Israel, whereas Hamas is an opportunity? Mr. Netanyahu said, when he was asked, why on earth do you give money to Hamas? He said, anyone who is not interested in creating a Palestinian state should support Hamas. I think you heard that.
Norman, do you want to respond to that?
Speaking of things I've heard, I've still not heard you respond to the question of whether your president, Mr. Abbas, the past 2 years has been blaming everything on Hamas for what happened during the past 2 years. I've not heard you respond to that. Well, I've listened to the statements.
Do you want to give me the chance to respond now?
You.
If you wish, I would.
Yes.
If you want, I could respond to this. To us, as a national movement working for creating a Palestinian state, at this critical time in this world, which is dangerous, it is very important to distance ourselves from what Hamas did on October 7th. I say this as a spokesman of a movement who had struggled against the Israeli occupation in so many ways. And at the end, we came to believe that creating a Palestinian state on the side of Israel, instead of creating a Palestinian state instead of Israel, as Hamas tries to make us believe it wants to do, is the right way. The right way is creating peace, creating a Palestinian state. This is what we want. Mr. Abbas hasn't blamed Hamas for everything. He has condemned Israel for what it did. But he has every right, being a representative of the Palestinian people, to distance himself from Hamas, which is becoming the pariah of the world, much as Israel itself is, for the terrible crimes Israel is doing. So sometimes you have three, you have...
Sir, with all due respect, you have a paycheck to earn, so I understand what you're saying. However,
I don't think it's useful to insult people you're talking to. I could do the same to you, but I really wouldn't.
Okay, allow me to finish.
I'm capable of, trust me.
Allow me to finish. According to all the public opinion polls in the West Bank, about 25% of the Palestinian people support Abbas.
Which are financed by the United States.
25%. Now, if you look at the number of people employed by the Palestinian Authority, it comes to about 25%. So the only people in what you said Abbas represents the Palestinian people. No, he doesn't. When was the last election in the West Bank? Can you tell the audience?
Have you? This is the same words
you
that
said,
were uttered by
when
Danny
was the
Danon
last?
at the United
When was
Nations.
the last election?
The representative of the state
when
of
was
Israel
the last
said
election?
exactly these words at the Assembly of the United Nations, inciting against the Palestinian Authority. So he is happy to hear you discrediting and delegitimizing the Palestinian Authority. This is what Danny Danon has said.
You said he represents.
Of course
the Palestinian people. When was the last election? When was the last election?
Well, we tried to hold elections in 2021, and
when was the last election? Please answer the question.
So
when
we
was
had
the last
choice.
election?
Either we hold elections without Jerusalem,
I didn't ask you
or
that.
we hold elections.
Yeah, I'm just asking you a simple, factual question.
We're not in the classroom, Mr. Finkelstein.
All right, we're going to leave this here. This is a debate. We might move this on because we're very shortly going to run out of time.
Just quickly, this argument cuts both ways. Quickly, the PA didn't hold elections in the West Bank. Hamas has been ruling Gaza since 2007. It didn't hold elections in Gaza either. So this is not really a game of who was elected and who was not. The last time everyone was elected.
But we did hold
elections.
The
last time everyone was elected.
One of the biggest criticisms, though, that we've heard recently was that recognition of a Palestinian state was a reward for Hamas. So, by extension, then, is normalization with Israel a reward for Netanyahu? In an interview with an American network, the Prime Minister said he now has an opportunity to make peace with many, many more countries, he said, and that it would be the greatest gift he can bring the people of Israel, the region, and the world. Hussein, is normalization a reward for Netanyahu?
I think it's a reward for everyone. I have a view about peace that I understand is unorthodox and not that common. But I think that everyone can sign peace and then disagree and get to a settlement about disagreements. There are dozens of disagreements around the world between different nations, and they don't really fight wars for them. Some states even have diplomatic ties, but they can sort their disagreements yet. So to my mind, I think, if we get all of these parties, whether the Palestinians and the Israelis or other Arab countries and Israelis, to sign peace first, not treat peace as a reward at the end of the process. Just sign peace, and then after we do that, because peace tends to build trust between the players and the actors. And once that's done, you can say, listen, this should be under our government. That part you can take under your government. I think this would have been a much more effective way than doing it in such a way that we put peace at the very end and we say we have to check all these boxes that, some so-and-so will have to stop shooting, so-and-so will have to stop doing that. So, and until you get to the end of the box, honestly, seemed impossible since 1993. Until we get to the end of these boxes, there's no way we can get to peace. So to my mind, if we reverse this and we start with peace, and from then on we go to sorting out who gets what, listen, I'm not underestimating the conflict between the Palestinians and Israelis. The French and the Germans fought hundreds of years of wars. And now if you drive between the two countries, you can't even find the border between them. So peace is doable, but it just needs some goodwill, and it needs both sides to be at peace with the idea first before they start becoming at peace with one another. But that's my view, and I understand it's uncommon and unorthodox at this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Jamal, is normalization a reward for Netanyahu after what we've seen in these past 2 years?
Yes. I think Netanyahu doesn't deserve any peace deal with any Arab countries right now, unless Israel recognizes Palestine, and not only recognizes Palestine, but ends its occupation, illegal occupation to Palestine. Only then can we really talk about the Arab Peace Initiative, which requires from Israel a complete withdrawal from all Arab lands that it occupied in 1967. Only then does Israel deserve normalization with the Arab world, not because this is a just solution, but because it's a practicable solution, if I may say so. But what's the alternative? What's the alternative? Is it the military option? If the military option was a viable one, then let me ask the question, why has Israel been fighting between 1948 and 2025? Because the military option is a non-starter. It didn't help Israel. When I saw the Iranian missiles raining on Israel, I asked myself, why do they force themselves to live this way? So I don't believe that Israel in the current composition and after all this genocide deserves any peace treaties with anyone unless it recognizes the right of Palestinian people to self-determination. But when it comes to the point that it's a classical Zionist talking points, they say recognizing Palestine is a reward to Hamas. That's ironic because Hamas has dedicated its entire political life to destroying every probability of creating a Palestinian state. In fact, it calls us traitors because we call for the creation of a Palestinian state within the borders of 1967, saying that we renounced the rest of Palestine, which is 78% of the land of Palestine. That's why they disagreed with the idea and the notion of creating a Palestinian state. That's why I believe it's not a reward to Hamas, it's a punishment to Hamas, because they know in a democratic, strong Palestinian states, a political movement like Hamas has no place. They know this.
Mm-hmm.
And Norman, we know it too.
Is normalization a reward for Israel? Is it even something that Netanyahu should be thinking about at this point in time? Surely he's got more important, closer issues at home that he needs to get in order first?
By October 6th, 2023, the only talk in town was whether or not the Saudis were going to join the Abraham Accord. At that point, when it looked like the people of Gaza would be left to languish and die in that concentration camp, they launched the attack. Once the attack was launched and Israel retaliated with its genocide in Gaza, every Arab state colluded with the U.S. and Israel in order to see that the people of Gaza were crushed by the Israeli genocide. With the honorable exception of the Houthis, and at a lower level, the Hezbollah, every other leadership in the Arab world left Israel a free hand to murder the people of Gaza. In fact, it was South Africa, not an Arab state. It was South Africa that went to the ICJ to stop the genocide in Gaza.
All Arab states have supported South Africa doing it.
Every Arab state was happy to see Gaza pulverized so that they can re-enter that normalization that was going to occur before October 7th.
Jamal, what do you
So
think
it
about
wasn't
that?
a
Because we haven't seen any countries normalize since then.
This is really counterproductive. We are totally appreciative of the role of Saudi Arabia, which has masterminded the peace conference in New York alongside with France. They have brought international recognition to the state of Palestine by major states who had their say in creating Israel, like Great Britain, France, and other states, Canada, Australia. This is very important, and this wouldn't have taken place without the support of Saudi Arabia, who is the biggest donor of the aid entering Gaza. The same goes for Egypt, UAE, and all other countries. I have never seen in my entire life the Arab states as united as they are now. And without Saudi Arabia, Israel would have an easy ride in the entire region. But the Saudis said, without a Palestinian state, there will be no normalization. This is their position even before October 7th. Mm-hmm. And I believe if that normalization succeeded, had taken place before October 7th, with the Palestinian independence as a major component of the Saudi-Israeli peace, 70,000 people would be alive today. Mm-hmm. But they're dead, gone forever.
We're almost out of time. We've only got about 1 minute left. Hussein, I'll give you a chance to make your final point, and then we'll wrap it up.
No, listen, I think, again, it's really interesting that someone in New York is just bashing all Arab governments and almost all Arab people, and just saying the two parties that count are the two violent non-state actors, the Houthis and Hezbollah. And, you know, as someone who grew up with Hezbollah, this offends me. But anyway, I'm not the point, and Hezbollah is not the point. I'm happy that the war is over. And I want phase 2 to happen. Unfortunately, I don't feel or think it's going to happen. I want it to happen. I want Hamas disarmed. I want a new Palestinian Authority to get back Gaza, maybe build a government and just replicate the experiments everywhere else or in the West Bank. So things can happen, but we really have to step back from the language of war and of accusing everybody else of treason and, you know, using ad hominem against people we disagree with.
Gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there. We appreciate all your opinions and your diverse points of view here on Counterpoints. Norman Finkelstein, political scientist and author of the new book, Gaza's Gravediggers, an inquiry into corruption in high places. Dr. Jamal Nazzal, spokesperson for the Palestinian political party Fatah, and Hussein Abdul-Hussain, research fellow at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies. Thanks for being with us. And thank you to you for tuning in to this episode of Counterpoints. To keep up to date with our latest debates and interviews, be sure to subscribe to Al Arabiya English on YouTube. And don't forget, follow us on X and TikTok. We'll see you next time.